Dear colleagues, members of the press, welcome to this virtual press briefing. My name is Esther Azatanku. I'm the Head of Information within the Information and Communication Directorate of the African Union. And this press briefing will be addressed by His Excellency, Ambassador Bankole Adeoye, who is the new Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security of the African Union. Commissioner Bankole also happens to be the very first commissioner at the helm of the newly created Joint Department of the Political Affairs, Peace and Security, following the African Union reforms. His Excellency will brief you on his vision, priorities, and strategy during his 4 years mandate, as well as give you the significance of his office to the African continent. After that, we will take a few questions from the Q&A box under your Zoom screen, and that will be it. And let me now, please, having said that, give the microphone or invite our Commissioner Bankole to please take the floor for his briefing. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to all our media personnel. I really want to thank you for the warm congratulations. And now that we have taken office, it is important to see and to know our priorities. The African Union Political Affairs, Peace and Security is a very strategic portfolio. As we all know, it is at the heart of Agenda 2063. It is the heartbeat of our continent when it comes to the future of our youth, of our women, of our elderly, of all, and of course also how we engage our partners, how we engage the international community. It is a very, very strategic position, and I once again use this opportunity to thank all member states, our leaders, our foreign ministers for making history with the overwhelming support I received. Now the work begins, and that is why today I've been meeting at the highest level with the chairperson of the Commission, His Excellency Musa Faki Mahamat, as well as the various commissioners, and well as the directors and senior management of the new department. I have 4 or 5 top priorities. 5. One is very unique and which is universal to the Commission. The first strategic plan is the implementation of the new merger. We heard from Madam Esther the introduction of being the first African to occupy this position of a merged department that is focusing on political affairs, peace, and security. Therefore, that merger under the auspices of the AU institutional reform, ably led by His Excellency President Paul Kagame of the Republic of Rwanda, will need to be activated. And that is why we are starting from hitting the ground running. This is very factual because we have to focus on the deliverables and change our mindset and move our trajectory to institutional development so that we can serve the people of Africa better in this very important field. So that is number 1 priority. And it is immediate, and we'll be working with all our stakeholders within the Commission, within our partners, and outside the Union, that we really engage in the integration of governance into the conflict prevention, conflict management, and conflict resolution. The second priority has to do with re-energizing the continental early warning system, conflict prevention, and mediation. Over the years, we have invested so much in responding to conflicts without investing our tools, our energy, our time in conflict prevention. I believe that will be the African Union, the world will be a better place for us if we promote preventive diplomacy, as was championed by one of Africa's greatest sons in the past, Dr. Boutros Ghali, who also became UN Secretary General. He spoke about the emphasis on preventive diplomacy. So one of the things I'll be doing under my commissionership is to devote more energy into early warning, into preventive diplomacy, and engaging in mediation at the highest level. And as we know, women are better negotiators. We will use our FemWise, panel of the wise, and all the tools we have to the benefit of our people, to the benefit of the union, and of course, to the benefit of humankind. So the third priority has to do with what I call the integrated capacity. We need to build the great integrated capacity for conflict management. And in this respect, with focused attention, priority attention to addressing the menace of terrorism and violent extremism. We'll be starting up with a platform. We'll be using the mechanisms that we have already. We will rejig, we will re-energize, we will reset these mechanisms, the ad hoc coalitions, whether they are in MNJTF, the G5 Sahel, Joint Force, or AMISOM. It is important that we get the capacity and the capabilities of our peacekeepers very right. But one important thing I'll also be doing is to relook at the concept, to have a relook at the concept, which will be promoting the integration and the differentiation between conflict management in the way where we are going to push for peacekeeping, for peace enforcement, and for peace building. These three areas will let us create a new axis that will improve our training and move us to a greater height when it comes to conflict management, so that in the end, we can have post-conflict reconstruction and development, which will be built using the PRCV Center, CRV Center in Cairo, and other academic agencies and partners to assist us in doing this effectively. The fourth pillar has to do with what I call the strengthening of democracy and good governance for human security. This is very critical. These priorities are not in any way consecutive. They are integrated and they are simultaneous. So defending, promoting, protecting democracy, consolidating democracy is a very key priority for our continent. And as we know, we are moving from the era of just integrating democracy into our daily lives, but also promoting good governance in the full ramifications of the world, from political to socioeconomic development and economic management and governance. And that really brings us to the place where our emphasis on human rights, our emphasis on the fair balance between the political and civil rights, as well as economic, social, and cultural rights, particularly the right to development, will be at the center stage. We'll be working very well with African organs and institutions, including the Banjul Commission on Human and People's Rights, as well as the APRM, the African Peer Review Mechanism in South Africa. This is very, very critical because the rule of law, constitutionalism, the unconstitutional change, zero tolerance for the unconstitutional changes of government will also continue to play a very leading role in our engagement. The most important factor is to ensure that democracy is protected, democracy flourishes, and we have the synergy to promote a new democratic culture that will let our people enjoy the benefits of development. And finally, the fifth strategic pillar has to do with building the right, inclusive, and smart partnerships. These partnerships will be extended. The scope, we will ensure that the passion we have for Africa with our partners will be dependent on one factor: the priorities, the strategic pillars of the African Union, collectively endorsed by our leaders in Agenda 2063, in the African Peace and Security Architecture, in the African Governance Architecture, in the Silencing the Guns, in African Solutions to Africa's Problems. These policy instruments, including the Peace Fund, these policy instruments remain very, very relevant in today's world. But in today's world, as we deal with climate-induced conflicts, we deal with terrorism, we have to develop the right partnerships. a partnership that will remain focused on the mutual principles of equity, of equality, of mutual responsiveness, mutual respect, knowing fully well that our partners and us in the African Union have common interests. And that common interest is to maintain and to sustain peace and security and ensure that good governance thrive on our continent. I thank you, Madam Esther.
Thank you very much, Excellency Ambassador Bankole Adeoye. You have clearly outlined all your priorities and strategies and your vision, and we are very happy to see that most of the issues you have raised are of crucial importance to the continent. We have already received some few questions, and I'm advising the journalists, please, when you ask your question, make sure you identify yourself, identify your media, and make sure you focus your intervention on what the commissioner has just presented in his introductory remarks. Excellency Ambassador Bankole, in line with some of the issues that we have raised with the new scope of work as Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, I would like to ask you, Excellency, what new ideas will you bring to help enhance peace, security, sustainable development, human rights, and good governance in the African continent? Please, Excellency, you have the
floor. Thank you very much. Most of the strategic pillars that I've just enumerated have a number of new ideas. Some are political and some are technical. But let me just emphasize that the style of this commissionership will be very, very inclusive. It will be participatory and it will be accountable. That will be universal in dealing with our member states, our leaders. The second aspect has to do with what I call leadership for peace, and peace is leadership. Our leaders will be engaged more in trying to resolve the numerous crisis points on our continent. It is the good offices of the chairperson of the commission, the good offices of the chairperson of the union will be called upon more to engage and to support our peace efforts, our peace building efforts, and of course, our good governance initiatives. This is very critical. It is also important to emphasize that my engagement plan will be widespread. It will cover the stakeholders, the civil society, it will cover the professionals, the academia, the youth, the women. This will be part of the new style. But the new ideas, the ideas are already well embedded in those policy instruments I enumerated earlier. But the most important fact is that we now have to respect the commitment of our leaders and encourage our leaders, energize our leaders more to intervene in conflict situations, indeed contribute to conflict prevention. It is also very important to know that I will be engaging with the rest. And one of the new ideas that I have bringing on the table is to establish immediately an inter-knowledge exchange platform that will bring together all our regional economic communities and regional mechanisms. So we will be having a platform that will be speaking to the strategy of changing the narrative about Africa when it comes to peace and security, to working very well with our international community to make things happen. Our leaders, our regional economic communities will be using this platform through the Peace and Security Council to engage in changing the narrative around the African story. It is also very critical to see that we will need to build that capacity for mediation. Mediation will become the center stage of our endeavors, and it will be led using the panel of the wise, FEMWISE, and all the tools and mechanisms that we have in place. It is also important not to forget that we will be promoting knowledge management, data science in the field of peace, security, and political affairs. A lot of people believe that data for conflicts may not be useful. but we talk about the root causes of conflict and the conflict trends, we will need to do more with knowledge management, generate more ideas. And the first proposal that I have, a new idea that I have, is that from this year, we are going to start producing what I call the flagship knowledge product that will be dealing specifically with the state of peace and security in Africa, as well as also urging our leaders and the APRF to also produce the one on the governance report in Africa, the state of governance in Africa. So these two flagships will see the department move to higher grounds when it comes to knowledge exchange. And with the idea of this inter-rec exchange that will be speaking about governance, peace and security, stability on a continent, and how to promote the right to development, I believe we can make things happen better, faster. But in all, the vision, the newness of this commissionership is around making sure that we build synergy for a peaceful, secure, and a more democratic Africa. And we can only do that collectively. So collective security approach, whether it's at the STC level, which is the Specialized Technical Committee that deals with defense, security, and safety, or the one that deals with local government and public administration, that these are the two under my purview. We will be pushing for that collective narrative that makes us to see us in a way that is unique. Let me also add that the African solutions to African problems, as I've always said, is also translated in the English abbreviation as soon as possible. So we'll be bringing speed to addressing most of these issues when we speak about tackling the numerous challenges on our continent, dealing with this area of peace and making sure that security and stability reign in our different countries and on our continent.
Thank you very much, Excellency. From our Q&A box, we have this question coming in from Mr. Adetunji Omotola, who is the co-founder and anchor of Afrospace, a weekly online Pan-African magazine media platform. And the question goes as follows. The first one, the African Union has from its inception been dependent on its partners to fund its peace and security activities, including its peace support operations. And how does the African Union intend to speedily change this funding model? That's the question. Also, what has been the success, if any, of the Kaberuka-Lopez proposal in June 2016 of the 0.2% levy on import from non-member states Africa, which is expected to generate an amount of $1.2 billion. Excellency, you have the floor.
The representative of Afrospace for the question. And indeed, our leaders have recognized that over-dependence, over-reliance on partners for funding of the programs or the operations of the African Union is unhealthy and is unsustainable. And that is why they have put in place the Peace Fund, for example. That Peace Fund, as we speak, has generated over $200 million in the last few years. And we are marching on towards the target of $400 million. But we know that will still not be enough in trying to address the peace and security governance challenge that we have on our continent. So the plan is for the African Union to be more responsive to planning and ensuring that the monitoring and evaluation frameworks are right in place so that we can actually predict the areas of interest when it comes to conflict prevention that I stated earlier on. The support that we now, the funding that goes into peace support operations is huge. And the only way to address that is to invest more in conflict prevention, is to invest more in the peer review mechanism, is to invest more in the universality of countries, of member states that adhere and accede to the African review mechanism. So the Peace Fund is beginning we believe is beginning to take full shape, and it's being revitalized with the support of the champion leader, President Paul Kagame of Rwanda. And in doing so, we believe that the Peace Fund will, in the next few months, be actively resourced to use for some of the areas that partners have already been supporting for the past few years. And as you are aware, the AU Partners Group will be engaged by me and my colleagues in the department in the next few days. And in doing so, we will be speaking on how to wean off ourselves from the over-dependence only at top priorities and where member states. And you have to also realize that we are in a different context. The impact of COVID-19 pandemic has really ravaged most of our economies. Some of our economies on the continent are in recession. Some are just coming out of recession. And I believe that this is not the time to be increasing the budget, but indeed to make use of the resources we have, the few resources we have, the limited resources we have, more prudently and more judiciously. And I think this is where the department will be planning for the budget for the new 2022 budget of the African Union that will be dealing with political affairs, peace and security. So our funding model is going to be changing, it's going to be addressing, but we also must emphasize, while the African Union will take full responsibility towards the funding sustainably in the near future of its peace support operations, of its capacity needs, and of course, preventive diplomacy, the three windows of the Peace Fund, we must emphasize, and it is not in the interest of the international community to shirk its responsibility. Because we know that from the UN Charter, it is very, very clear, it's explicit that it is the responsibility of the UN Security Council for the maintenance and the sustenance of peace and security on the global scale. Therefore, we will be promoting a new position paper, a common African position paper, that will be dealing on the use of UN assessed contributions for the support to AU-led peace support operations in the context of the Peace Fund. We will be engaging with the A3, African 3 members of the UN Security Council, and other stakeholders in New York, in all the multilateral capitals of the world, through the High Representative, Dr. Kaberuga. That brings me to the second question, which is exactly not in my purview, but it is general. But I can assure you that the Union has adopted a dual approach. A number of countries operate the 0.2 levy on eligible goods as a means to resource the Union sustainably, and at the same time, others, because of their democratic frameworks, cannot use this formula because some consider it discriminatory to other traders, importers, and exporters. So we will be, as you should be assured, that the leadership of the Union is taking this very seriously and sustainably to matching towards the funding that will be adequate for the African Union in the long term. But we are better, I can assure you that we are better off from where we started in the last decade. In this decade, we have moved on. We have mobilized $200 million from a paltry sum that was never beyond $10 million in the old Peace Fund. Now, this Peace Fund that was established in 1983 has taken a life of its own and is now being funded by over 50 member countries at any time since its inception. We are now moving towards greater accountability. We must not forget that increased budgeting, increased resources also implies greater accountability and transparency. And that is what the Union is doing under the leadership of His Excellency Musa Faki Mohammed. I can assure you that, and I thank you for this question.
Thank you. That was very clear, Excellency. Our last question, given the interest of time, will come from journalist Marie-Raphael Ntolo, who is a journalist for Africa 24. She is asking, I wish to know how you intend to ensure the follow-up of these priorities, that means the priorities that you have listed out, throughout your mandate. Which strategies do you intend to put in place to ensure the application of these priorities, precisely the one focused on conflict prevention in the continent? That's the question, Excellency. You have the mic.
No, thank you very much. As I stated, I've tried to answer this question, but I will just repeat myself. The first is that I'm going to use the institutional approach by having an engagement plan and communication strategy that will work with a 100-day plan up to 1 year. So these strategic pillars, these priorities that I've enumerated, the African leaders can hold me accountable in 1 year. Meaning, I'll be working with a plan that will promote implementation and coordination. It will promote coherence and communication. The bottom line is that it shows the need for all of us, from the directors in the department to the political policy organs in the Executive Council, the Peace Permanent Representatives Committee, the Peace and Security Council, and of course, the Assembly of Heads of State, to know that we are now in an age to transparently, accountably hold ourselves ready to follow through on these priorities. So specifically for conflict prevention, it will be a different mix, a mix of addressing the issues from early warning to mediation. And that workflow will include every stakeholder where possible. The resources will be needed in terms of human, knowledge, technical, and financial. But I can assure you that we are working with the team in-house to get all this on the table so that conflict prevention can be a top priority. And when conflict prevention becomes top priority, we must not forget that interwoven with conflict prevention will be the post-conflict, so that we avoid conflict relapse, so that we avoid countries going back to where they started in terms of conflict. And using the platform of the decision-making organ, the Peace and Security Council, to ensure that conflict prevention will be necessary. Another follow-up step is to use what we call the regional horizon scanning, where on a regular basis, at least monthly, and through the situation room, which is already well established in this Yorere building, will address those issues that look at vulnerabilities and the issues that also look at resilience. We must not forget that our countries, our people have been very resilient even in the face of this deadly pandemic. But we can assure you that conflict prevention will be inclusive, it will be steady, and we will be steadfast in making sure that all of us, all stakeholders, the African Union, the Commission, the organs, we must not forget the African Court in Arusha for Human and People's Rights, the Commission, as well as players that speak to development, the African Union Development Agency, NEPAD, the AFDP, which is a strong pillar of African development landscape. All of us will have to work together. And not forgetting again that the only way you can assure conflict prevention is by promoting open societies, societies that respect the human rights and the fundamental freedoms of our people. But we must say that the cultural heritage, this is the year of the arts and culture in the Union. The cultural heritage, the practices of the African people will never be compromised. So human rights will be the rights that Africans have defined in the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. It will be the democracy that we have craved for, that is enshrined in the African Charter on democracy, elections, and governance. So for me, the horizon is very clear. Moving from this pillar to partnership that is very strong, that is very determined, to working very well with the regional economic communities, I can assure you that we'll be successful by God's grace, and we will all have a better continent, a more peaceful one that is at peace with itself and, of course, at peace with the world. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellency. With this, we have come to the end of our virtual press briefing, which I may call an inaugural press briefing, because as you well know, colleagues, our ambassador and commissioner for political affairs, peace and security, just assumed duty today, 15 March 2021, and we are very privileged to have him today, meaning that he's a major friendly person, and he has shown us that he will continue like this to update and put himself accountable through the media on all of his activities, as he rightly said. Unless the ambassador commissioner has another last statement, I think we are done with this press briefing for today. Excellency, you have any word to say?
No, thank you very much, Esther. And I really want to assure you that we'll be calling on the media. We'll be media friendly. We will open our space to the media, and I'm sure we should have a structured engagement like this maybe every 3 months, so that we know for sure we are all speaking as one to working towards the goal of a peaceful and secure Africa. I thank you so much.
Thank you, Excellency Ambassador Bankole Adeoye, and you are the Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, and we just listened there to the Commissioner. We want to thank all the colleagues who have been here for the press briefing. We have taken note of all the other questions that just came in, but because of the tight schedule of the Commissioner, we cannot respond to all your questions right now, but we will respond to them individually and send them to you by email. We promise you that. And please, thank you for attending this press briefing, and we hope to see you soon. Goodbye.